It's Thursday, July 13th, 2017. I'm your host, Sarah Mantle. We have a great show for you today. First up, we're going to chat with Town Manager Mark Ells about his priorities. Then we'll hear from Town Councilor Paul Hebert. And finally, we'll catch up with State Representative Randy Hunt about the recently approved state budget. All of that on this episode of Barnstable Today. But first, let's go ahead and get a look at today's top headlines. The Recreation Division is hosting Swim and Safety Week this week. As part of Swim and Safety Week, town lifeguards will be hosting rescue demonstrations at various beaches across town. Veterans Beach head lifeguard Caroline Ells says Swim and Safety Week is held for staff and beachgoers.
So the main reason that we hold Swim and Safety Week is so that the patrons on the beach can get familiar and comfortable with anything that we have to do here at the beach. So if we're doing first aid, if we're doing a peat rescue, board rescue, spinal, especially CPR. Sometimes it's very different for people that are here on vacation or even the residents that have never seen anything like that before.
The town of Barnstable has held Swim and Safety Week for more than 30 years. People of Action, the Barnstable Police Department, and the town of Barnstable will host the second Barnstable Unity Day at the Hyannis Village Green this month. The event is intended to bring together the community and the local police force in a free celebration. The event is open to all and will include free music, free food, and activities for all ages. Please bring your own chairs and blankets. Barnstable Unity Day will be held Friday, July 28th from 4 to 7. Well, kids won't have to go hungry this summer, and that's thanks to a new program being offered at the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. The Food for Kids program will run through August 25th. The program will offer free lunch from 12:15 to 1 p.m. and a free snack from 3 to 3:30 Monday through Friday. We're going to learn more about that important program during our interview with Youth Center Manager Mark Boardley on tomorrow's show. The State Division of Marine Fisheries reopens shellfishing in Barnstable. Shellfishing was closed due to the extreme rainfall last Friday. The closure impacted all shellfishing areas east of the Cape Cod Canal. That includes the town of Sandwich, Bourne, Falmouth, Mashpee, and Lewis Bay in Yarmouth, as well as, of course, Barnstable. Again, all areas are now reopened to the harvest of shellfish. Up next, we're going to have our weekly interview with Town Manager Mark Ells. So, Mark, I can't believe we're here in July. You've officially finished the entire budget process for FY, I guess.
18.
Yeah, that's right, FY 18. So what are the major efforts that you're focused on at this point moving forward?
Well, we are always, and it's good to have Andy at my side upstairs. It's made a tremendous difference to be able to work with somebody that is used to participating in kind of problem-solving, decision-making, moving forward with some of the big picture efforts that we have in place. And to sort of come back to the question you started with, well, it always starts with working with what the council identifies for us in their strategic plan, making sure we're hitting on those priorities. Our infrastructure program is so critical to our long-term success here in Barnstable for our residents and our businesses and visitors, making sure that things like our wastewater and our water, and water in a very broad sense. It's interesting. We've got a discussion coming up, first meeting in September with the council, a workshop where we're going to talk about the maintenance dredging permits that we're getting and the cost of doing that and where we are relative to making sure we're doing that to address needs within it. But when we back up, a lot of times people just think when we talk about water, it's drinking water or maybe it's wastewater. But in fact, it's all our water. It's our ponds. It's our dredge programs. It's how we manage drainage. It's everything. And so you're going to see a very comprehensive discussion as we move forward over the next 18 months with what we're doing. And a lot of people are focused on the wastewater side. Rightfully so, on the wastewater side of this comprehensive water management planning that we're doing, but it's much broader than that. And I think some of the good work that the Cape Cod Commission has done recently to open doors for more innovative approaches will allow us to consider more ways to manage this issue. So that's a good thing. Looking long term at our employees, one of the questions that came up to the schools, though it was never directly asked to me, it's certainly something that a town manager in a community like Barnstable needs to be looking at long term. Our employees and our employees' benefits and our liabilities associated with those benefits, whether they be retirement or whether they be health care, and to really clearly within our 10-year financial plan be able to show what the trends are, what percentage of the budget it is, where we're going with this, what opportunities there might be, given what the industry offers, to be able to manage this in a way that allows us to have resources to do all those other things beyond just keep a good workforce that's competitively paid and benefited, because we don't want to lose them, because quite honestly we're a service business, and having them do a good job is our ability to deliver service correctly. So I'll spend more time working on that, and certainly our council leadership is well aware of these challenges. It's not unique to us. Every business, every municipality in the country is challenged with this. We want to have, right now we have a nationally recognized, certainly statewide recognized budget, and both capital operating revenue projection. We want to be able to address these as well. And Mark Milne's done our finance director has done a fantastic job at already laying all of that out. We want to make it even more clear where we would like to see it go, because it's so critical that all parties are involved in that, meaning our employees, our management, our council, our public. Everybody understands the challenge. Everybody understands where we need to go with this. So that's one of the things. It isn't the single thing. There is no one single priority, I don't believe. Because we have so many different issues, working with our public schools and working with our recreation department to make sure that we're giving our kids in this community every single opportunity to be busy with good choices and having access to the wonderful facilities that we have here. There's another effort. Working with our senior center to understand our changing population, and our, a larger percentage of our population is is aging, and so we have to make sure that we have a community that services that demographic as well. And you have to sit back and really take a look at what you have, where you're going, and how you're going to manage it over increments of time. And none of this is like 1 year. I mean,
right.
It's all 5-10 year, therefore projections. Therefore, you have to continue to review it, evaluate it, and modify it appropriately.
And with an ever-changing landscape, I mean, we really don't know where some of these issues are going to go, just with factors beyond our control. Looking into the future, we have a vote coming up for the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, so that could affect things here in Barnstable. Going to keep a close eye on that. You never really know what's going to happen with healthcare, so a lot of changing bits and pieces here, and just I'm sure it's a lot to keep a handle on.
Well, it is, but fortunately for the town of Barnstable, they have very qualified staff that are in many cases on the front edge of the different options we have to manage this. We're very fortunate in Barnstable. I hear that from so many other managers in so many other communities across the state. We get to interact with them fairly regularly. So that's the good thing about where we sit relevant to it. But yeah, you're right. It's the challenges for all of us.
But, looking out to, it's been so nice, even when we sat down talking about it, things are really running nice and smoothly, which is a great thing to hear too. Looking at the community service officers walking around on Main Street and in Hazleton Park, every time I'm around, I think what a huge difference that program has made here in the town of Barnstable. So many positive things happening here in the town of Barnstable.
I do, and I think it starts with our leadership in recognizing whatever the challenges that we have and being supportive of appropriate management of that issue. In this case, the police chief put in place several different approaches, the CSOs being one of them, and that has yielded the results that we had hoped for. Being focused on ending the camps that are out there within our community. That has resulted in an end a deliverable that we wanted to see there. But there are many others, and so again, we continue to try to, marshal our resources in a way that address those issues as they come up. And you need support from the top. You need the resources in place. You need competent people managing the resources. And again, Barnstable's fortunate.
And a good partnership too between yourself, the council, and the rest of the management here in the town of Barnstable.
And the community.
Yeah, that's true.
We have got an engaged community here. There isn't a day that I'm not talking with multiple groups, individuals or groups, about so many issues across our community, whether it's a neighborhood, whether it's a resource, an educational issue. So it's and that makes us stronger.
Yeah.
It
and
really
involved
does.
and engaged citizens.
And educated. Sure. They're intelligent people asking good questions and expect us to deliver.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, telling us all about where you and your staff are headed into the future. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Our guest, of course, Town Manager Mark Ellis. Now let's check in with Town Councilor Paul Hebert. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for joining me today. Very excited to chat with you. I know last time you were here, you talked a little bit about the bottle bill for nips. And this is a problem that no one really likes to see, these nips, but they end up on the side of the road so many times. I think the bill would have placed a 5-cent deposit on the nips so that they could be recycled for money, which would hopefully cut down on some of that nips being thrown on the side of the road. Where are we with that bill?
So it's already had a reading, the first reading in the joint committee, and there was no opposition, and there was just some concerns about the mechanics, the logistics of how this would work. So it will go on to a second reading, and I've been asked to participate in drafting some concept of how we could do the NIPS in a way that's comfortable. The retailers don't want to spend a whole lot of money redoing their vending machines, their reverse vending, and they don't really want them coming into the door. They want it separate from the retail shop. They don't want to mess up the shop. They don't want, how do you, I mean, you can literally fit 1,000 NIPS in a bag that we traditionally put 240 cans in. So, so I've already done an initial draft. The committee has the draft, and so I'm going to meet with Representative Hunt, with another gentleman who runs a number of retail shops and redemption components of that, and we're going to talk about how to simplify it and make it so it's most comfortable for most people. So I have a couple of unique approaches that I think might work. So we'll see where that goes. Wonderful. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses, and good to hear that it's getting a second reading. That means it's really moved pretty far. It's got traction. Yeah. But I'll tell you, across Massachusetts, the people are so upset about the NIPS that it's going to move forward. Yeah. 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 When you hear it's a second reading, that's very, very far. So good work there, Paul. I want to talk to you a little bit too. I know a big focus for a lot of people in town has been the discussion of a proposed condo complex on the harbor area. I think South Street as well. I'm not sure what the cross street is, but South Street and another nearby location. 33-unit condo complex. This has been a big topic of discussion for a lot of people in the community. We've been watching it go through planning board. You're the liaison to the housing committee. They've also discussed this proposed condo complex. One of the issues and one of the reasons it has gone before the housing committee is because the developer would like a waiver for some affordable housing, trying to figure that out. So tell me a little bit about the committee's work and what they have voted to do as far as the condo complex. I never saw the movie. The title was It's Complicated. I never saw the movie, but I've never thought of that phrase so much as being at town council. So issues are very, very complicated, and there's nothing really simple about anything. So we want to see development there. There's no doubt about it. But everybody has their opinion, from historic to the businesses in the area, and about the size and about the architecture. But when it comes down to helping with the housing situation that we have in the town, it becomes complicated. And so Mr. Bornstein has come up with some suggestions on how to maybe alternative. No one is thinking that the affordable units, so-called, should be at that complex. It just isn't necessarily a good fit. But he has options on how to compensate. So he could create 3 or 4 off-site brand new facilities. He could just put some cash down based on the 10% average selling price, and then it goes into the housing trust. So we use the housing trust to develop affordable housing, no problem there. And then the other one is that and I thought it was very creative on his part, because he owns a lot of properties and a lot of rentals, would be to exchange some existing ones, but we want it to be deeded and clearly what are we getting, and we want to compare apples to apples. And you might get to the point that 5 or 6 would be more appropriate of quality in order to compensate for that. So that's still under debate, so we'll have to wait and see how that's going to turn out. For the sake of housing, I hope it moves forward. I do understand when people say, hey, it's big and it's going to kind of shut off the harbor. And so everybody has an opinion on that. I don't know if everybody's going to end up happy at the end, but we're going to keep trying.
Right.
So,
that's all you can do, really,
yeah,
is follow the debate and be a part of the
and
discussion.
One of the overall problems that we're having is people have a negative concept of affordable, and I wish it was somebody once said to me, it's attainable housing, that based on your salary, based on your life situation, is to have housing. And I wish we could almost drop the word affordable because of some kind of negativity there. Even workforce is housing. It's more taking care of each other and having a place to call home, for me, is what it's all about. So, but again, it's complicated.
Right. Isn't that the way it goes? Talking about complicated, too, I want to talk to you a little bit about health insurance costs here for the town of Barnstable. Where are you? You've been thinking about the issue. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts.
Okay, so I'm already working with people in the House and in the Senate about the health insurance. There has been several editorials, in my view, or letters to the editor about the high cost of health insurance. And it's affecting every segment of our society. So we just got done the budgets for the town of Barnstable, and no small part of that budget really is health care. And in our town, we pay 50% of the health care insurance for our employees. That amounts to $10 million. So that also means that $10 million other money, plus out of pocket, is being paid by our employees. So that's not a small amount. Every town, every city in Massachusetts, every county, and the state itself is all under this blanket of high cost of insurance. At the same time, we just got done with the One Cape Summit that was very, very interesting, very, very well done. So I'm sitting there and I'm liaison to the Board of Health, and I'm saying the single biggest, my doctor told me this, the single biggest health improvement for the world was the availability of clean water. And so when we look at how we handle our wastewater, which is going to be very expensive, but doable, and can also be very practical at the same time, is how do we pay for all this? And we're looking at different ways to get it done. But since water is so crucial to our health, I started thinking more and more and more about the whole idea of what are we going to do about the health care. So business people are really almost depressed every year. You're lucky if your health insurance just goes up 10%, but we're hearing 25%. One man I just talked to said 40%, he's self-insured, 40% increase in his health insurance. So where's it going to end? I'm not sure exactly what the period is, but the pharmaceutical industry just reported this is north of $50 billion profit, not $50 billion in income and revenue, $50 billion in profit. Where does it end? And the insurance companies reported 43% of profitability. So it doesn't match up to say that we've made a great year. And it's not like they're saying, hey, we've taken this money and we've put a great deal of it into reserve, So in case there's a catastrophic need, and you're not hearing that, you're just hearing higher salaries. I call insurance companies now the filter. You send your money, your premiums in, and they filter a little bit back to your community in terms of health services. So I'm in negotiations and conversations with a number of people, and I'm just stirring up the sand, if you will. But there are bills both in the House and in the Senate in Massachusetts to look at the single-payer program. So I want to tie that into the health of our people along with the health of our economy. Because when we wake up every morning stressed out that we don't have maybe enough health insurance, if you have a major tragedy health-wise in your family, somebody just complained that there was some foreclosures in town and they're blaming it on other issues. Foreclosures often are a result of people that can't keep up with their medical bills, and therefore they end up losing their homes. So it's, again, a very complicated thing, but I think that there's traction for it. Sooner or later, we're going to fix the insurance industry in terms of either single payer. And people are negative about the government doing it. I think the government can do a great job. I think Medicare does a great job. I think Medicaid does a great job. Mass Health and the Connector has done a great job. And I think we can tweak that. We're very concerned about fraud. It costs us a lot of money. I think we can all work together and make that even easier. Just take Cape Cod Health Care. The system that they have in Falmouth and here and the hospitals and the urgent care and the specialty programs, we have a terrific network of medical care and great professionals. So I'd rather send my supplemental health insurance premiums to the Cape Cod Hospital every single month and know that they can afford to hire the best and enough and to use the facilities to the max to take care of our people. And then I know 100% of my money is working for our people rather than being filtered out with profits and high salaries and not taking care of the people.
Well, like you said, a very complicated issue, and we are so glad that we have you working hard on all of these issues. Thank you so much for stopping by to talk to me today. We really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Our guest today, Precinct 3 Town Councilor Paul Hebert. Joining me now live on the phone, we have with us State Representative Randy Hunt. Randy, busy season on Beacon Hill. I know you guys have been hard at work on the budget. Where do we stand right now with the state budget?
Well, the House and the Senate versions of the state budget were reconciled by a conference committee and voted through by both the Senate and the House last week and sent to the governor's desk. The governor has 10 days in which to provide a list of line item vetoes or any other changes to that budget and then send those back to the respective chambers in the legislative part of our government. So Monday is that day. I expect that we'll find out if the governor has any objections to what was passed. Chances are there will be. And those vetoes and changes will be dealt with, I would imagine, within a couple of weeks after we get a look at them on Monday.
Great. Thanks for that update. And then, of course, I think if correct, the legislature could override those vetoes if they have enough support for an override.
Yeah, it's an interesting way that we have it set up. Unlike the U.S. president on a budget, the governor has the ability to change or veto line items and change what are called outside sections that just make other changes to procedures and regulations and that type of thing. So the governor has a lot of ability to make whatever changes, amendments, or just nullifying some line items. And that means that with a 2/3 vote of each of the Senate and the House, those items could be overridden, which is what, last year I think the governor came up with somewhere around $300 million of line item vetoes, for example, and the House overrode about $200+ million of those, and not less than 6 months later, or right around that time in December, we found out that we were going to be about $250 million short. So in other words, had we not overridden anything, we would have been perfectly in balance in December. But, you know, there are a lot of things that I voted for to override, and many things, more things actually, that I voted against. And that's kind of the process, and you need to decide what's really important, and we're not all going to have the same opinion as the governor.
True, true. Well, thank you for the update on the budget. I want to talk to you about the ever-changing healthcare landscape. How are you dealing with that on a state level?
Well, I am on the House Joint Committee, rather, of healthcare financing. This is my first term that I've been a member of this committee, and I wanted to be part of that because one of the number one issues, or the number one issue that many people have with regard to their personal budget, or towns regarding the town budgets, and even the state, is the cost of health care and how to figure out a better way to control those costs or to pay for it differently. Those are important things that this committee takes a look at. And we have a lot of bills that come to us that go anywhere from last week we heard, for example, actually this week on Tuesday, we heard a bill that would require the state not to pay for drugs any more than the least amount that is paid by the Veterans Administration for the same drug. So that seems like a simple thing, and say, yeah, we should get the same prices as the VA. And then, of course, when we hear testimony about it, we find out that pharmaceutical companies are providing these drugs to VAs at heavy discounts because the consumers of those drugs are veterans of our armed forces, and that is the reason for that discount, something that isn't necessarily extended to states looking to pay for drugs that are being consumed by just the average person on mass health. So everything we look at has two different sides, as you can imagine. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of bills that came up looking at the way that health care is paid for, and one group that call themselves Medicare for All would like for the state just to apply the Medicare model to everybody. That seems pretty simple. It would be a single payer, as Medicare is, and that type of scenario is used by a lot of other countries, but to put it into use one state at a time is going to be difficult to do. It's something that probably is better handled on the national level. For example, in Vermont, a few years ago, they decided they would go with a single-payer health plan for the state of Vermont, and a couple of the people that designed that system were testifying for the same thing for Massachusetts at the hearing. But a lot of people who follow this know that Vermont finally scrapped that whole experiment because taxes would have gone to the point that it would have been completely unaffordable for people and companies to deal with that. And there were a number of large employers who were ready to just close up shop and leave Vermont, GE being one of them, if this kind of thing came down. So when we look at single payer or any other type of changes, we have two problems. One is, it has to be big enough for it to work. So we can't compare Massachusetts to other countries because we're not as big as that. And the other problem that we run into is the uncertainty of what's happening in Washington, D.C. So we don't even know what the current situation with the Affordable Care Act is going to turn into. And without knowing any of that, or without knowing how that's going to affect Massachusetts and its Medicaid money, for example, it's pretty hard to come up with a plan to start heading in a different direction. So what I'd like to do is push very hard for learning about these things and then engaging our federal elected officials to try and get something going on the federal level that is going to be more predictable so that we can then figure out how we want to handle it at the state level.
Right, because as we know, all of this definitely affects us here in Massachusetts, even the discussions at the federal level. Thank you, Randy, for joining us today and telling us everything that you're doing on the committee, as well as some of the items being considered. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll talk about this topic again in the near future.
Very good. Good to talk to you.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. My guest today, State Representative Randy Hunt. Well, we're out of time today, so we will see you right back here tomorrow.